Now we're recording. Okay. 2 weeks off can mess you up, man. So Jeremiah, when you read the actual book and not just skim over it, like we would be prone to do in here, is a very dark book. It's chapter after chapter after chapter. I'm going to wipe you out. I'm going to wipe you out. You guys suck. I'm going to wipe you out. Oh, now you want to take out Jeremiah? You suck more. So I'm going to take you out. And and it makes sense when you remember what he's talking about. This is God's ultimate statement, was the establishment of Israel. I'm in control. I control history, and I have chosen this little plot of land in the midst of all these world strong powers: Egypt, Anatolia, Mesopotamia, the Hittites, and and Babylon, and Assyria. In the midst of all that, I had my little country, Israel. That is mine. But now you guys blew that. And so I'm going to destroy it. And my temple, I said my name would be there. I'm going to destroy it. And the people, of course, how do they know God said he's going to destroy it? Because people like Jeremiah say it. But other people like Jeremiah, other prophets say that's a lie. God would never destroy it. So the people are caught. And what are you inclined to believe? That God's going to wipe out his temple, his holy city? No. Jeremiah's on drugs. So it's very dark. Just going to wipe them out, wipe them out, wipe them out, with an occasional boost. Now, why Stephanie and Marianne and I were in Branson, we saw Queen Esther, the play. And if you've never been to Sight and Sound, you know how good it is. If you've never been, you owe it to yourself. Whatever they do well. Fine. March in, just grab one of my people. So if you ever get a chance, go there and see it. We saw Jonah and they had a whale fly over your head. And it's a play, not a movie. How do they do that? It was cool. Anyway, Esther was really good. And while I was watching it, the point of the Esther flick story is, who knows, but for such a time as this, you were installed as queen to protect your people. And it's all about the plotted genocide of the Jews, and then how God miraculously delivers them. Now, I was thinking about this, and I'm sitting in the audience, and it got me thinking about the Holocaust. How does a Jew reconcile the Holocaust with his existence? 6 million slaughtered. And for what? And then I realized there was a big for what. Who knows what came out of the Holocaust? Exactly. The nation of Israel, a place where Jews can go now and defend themselves. October 7th. You know what? Come after us. Give us all you got. We're going to survive. It's a big, big deal. And probably my closest friend at ORU, New Testament guy, he goes, it's just coincidence. that the state of Israel is here. I go, no, it really isn't. And when you read Jeremiah, what is God going to do with this? It's genocide, for lack of a better word. Except they don't all kill, but they get moved. He transplants them from Judah to Babylon. And two things happen. And I want to drive this home. The exile, which is what we're talking about, 586 BC, Babylon destroys Jerusalem and destroys the temple. 10 years earlier, 11 years earlier, Nebuchadnezzar had come down and exiled the cream of the crop of the Judahite population and moved them to Babylon. And then with this one, he destroys the city and destroys the temple. Now remember, Israelite religion required the temple because sacrifice had to take place there. And Israelite religion is centered on sacrifice and keeping the Torah. They go to Babylon, and now all of a sudden, remember we have two people there. We have Ezekiel, who was hauled off in 597, and that first hauling off with the cream of the crop. He's a priest, and he finds himself in the year where he's supposed to be starting his priesthood. He finds himself in Babylon, and that's what the whole book's about. I said, what in the... And so his ministry's been replaced. No longer is he going to be a priest. He's going to be a prophet. Jeremiah is a prophet. He's back in Judah. This time frame saw the creation of Judaism. In Jewish tradition, Ezra, as in Ezra Nehemiah, is the father of Judaism. That's kind of the capstone of a process that began 100 years earlier during the exile. How do we do our religion if we're not even in Judah? That was the big question. We don't have access to the temple, anything else. So remember, what did I tell you the solution is? What is Judaism? A little louder. Forest type. Torah study? Yes. Okay. Well, you did pretty good. You did two of them. There's three. Replacing the sacrifices of the Israelite religion, Mosaic covenant, for prayer, almsgiving, Torah study. Those are the big three. All right, and that is Judaism. And so they get that established there for a generation or two. And then Cyrus comes. The Babylonians get defeated by the Persians. And Cyrus, remember, is not a polytheist. He's a Zoroastrian. He's a monotheist. And so the Jews are going to be looking at him like that. He's a monotheist, but it's not our God he's talking about. How odd. But remember what he promised. What was the decree of Cyrus? Right. Who doesn't like that? Give me a C. Give me a Y. Give me an R. So this, in Isaiah calls him a Messiah. It says, and Isaiah, my Messiah, Cyrus. Well, Jeremiah is against this background. Isaiah is 100 years earlier. He's long dead. You got second Isaiah. We don't know who that is. But Jeremiah, one guy, he does have a helper. Who's Jeremiah's helper? Baruch. Do you remember the name Baruch? It shows up in the book. He's the one that actually writes it because he's a professional scribe. Yes. I mean, Jeremiah recites it to him in essence. So he records it, sends it out to the king. He has access to the royal house. And he sends Jeremiah's work to the king. The king starts reading it. And you know the story. Reads a column, cuts it off, burns it. Reads a column, cuts it off, burns it. So Jeremiah has to do a second edition right off the bat. And because in this book, Jeremiah is talking about destroying Judah, destroying Zedekiah, he's the king. You're going down. Who wants to read that? You're going down. The prophets, the king has prophets in his employ. And they tell him that Jeremiah's full of crap. We don't read it that way. They may genuinely not read it that way. They have a vested interest in not reading it that way. But eventually, the Babylonians come. Jeremiah gets tossed in jail. The Babylonians come, they release him. And kind of confirm that he's one of them. They let him free because they got word that he was telling everybody, submit to the Babylonians, this is of God. And they don't like it. So when you read Jeremiah, it's chapter after chapter of I'm going to destroy you, with the occasional good news tossed in. God's going to do something here. The minor note, but let's take care of it. You know, there's a translation of the Bible into Greek, right? Yes. Yes. So the Bible, Old Testament into Greek, Septuagint, done in Alexandria, Egypt, around 200, 250 BC. It becomes the Bible of the early church, for example. But I mean, diaspora Jews is the source of it. Jews not living in Judah. And the Septuagintal version of Jeremiah is very different. It's in a different order. A seventh of it doesn't even get translated of the Masoretic text. And it's just, you kind of, what's going on? And part of it is Jeremiah and Baruch at the end get Judah's fallen, and the Babylonians have installed a governor to run things, a Jewish, except it wouldn't have been called Jewish, but a Judahite governor. And some people in Jerusalem foment a rebellion. And Jeremiah rightly is going, are you out of your mind? I mean, they run the place. And you're going to rebel? They get caught or get stopped. And these guys run off to Egypt, the rebels. And they kidnap Baruch and Jeremiah and take them with him. So Jeremiah and Baruch find themselves in Egypt. And that's where he writes one of the editions of Jeremiah with Baruch down in Egypt. And what we're seeing in the Septuagintal version is one of these editions of Jeremiah, and then the one that we have in our Hebrew Bibles. It's an odd phenomenon.
So it doesn't make it inerrant.
It's just different. It's got the same information. The Hebrew version has everything that's in the Greek version, and plus a little bit. That's what it boils down to. Now, the reason we look at Jeremiah, lots of them, but this passage is extremely famous. Is that big enough to be read? We'll just get rid of that. I mean, we read this, every other month in here, this passage. Tom, can you read this for me?
Days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah.
Pause. That's big words. New covenant. They've just been hauled off to Babylon in his lifetime. And he comes with a word, I'm going to make a new covenant. Why are you in Babylon? Because you failed to keep the covenant. Every time I turn around, you're doing some sort of Baal worship or Asherah worship. You're out of your freaking minds. So what about this new covenant, Jeremiah? Tom?
Not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors. I took them by the hand, lead them out of the land of Egypt. Covenant that they broke.
So he's making that clear. That's the Mosaic covenant, of course. And you didn't keep it. That's why you're in exile, by the way, just in case you weren't sure. 33.
This is the covenant that I made with the house of Israel after those days. Put my law within them.
Pause. Where was the law under the Mosaic covenant? Well, it's on the scroll or the tablets in the ark, yeah. Huh. Okay, continue. Ah, right on their hearts. I'm going to internalize this. You're going to know the law. Huh. Keep going. So what's the point of the covenant? Nothing. It's not a trick question. A relationship. I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. They don't talk like this about Baal. They don't talk like this about Marduk. This is unheard of language. You don't talk that way about your deities. Enter into a relationship. I'll be their God. They will be my people. Next line.
Great. You're there in the
Know the Lord. That's just the new covenant's going to be about knowing the Lord, experiencing Yahweh, having an intimate knowledge of him. This is what Jeremiah is saying. Okay. We're in exile. because we couldn't keep the Mosaic covenant. Well, I'm going to make a new covenant. Jeremiah's alive. This is the year, I don't know. It was sometime after 586. So let's just say 550 makes it easy. Well, Jesus doesn't come for a half a millennium later. That's a long time. What we do get is Judaism in between. And Judaism is going to be working on this, knowing the Lord. They're going to know the Lord through Torah. That's their idea. And that's not exactly what Jeremiah is saying. They will all know me. What?
Is the law the same word for righteousness, or is it something?
No, righteousness is compliance to the covenant. That's all that means. And what am I not making clear? Okay. So, and I'll forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more. How did that get accomplished in the Mosaic covenant? Exactly. You had to do a sin offering. No talk about that here. All right. Now we have Ezekiel's version of this, who is a contemporary of Jeremiah. And we can talk about that later, but this passage gets quoted in Hebrews chapter 8. Remember? Jiminy Cricket. They need a tiny print. Reading this. Now, the point of what we're saying is this. We have such a high priest, one who is at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven. I mentioned in the holy places in the true tent that that the Lord set up, not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. Thus, it is necessary for this priest also to have something to offer. Now, if you're on earth, you would not be a priest at all, since our priests who offer gifts according to the Torah. They serve a copy and a shadow of the heavenly things. For Moses was about to erect the tent, he was instructed by God. See that you make everything according to the pattern that was shown you. But as it is, Christ has obtained a ministry that is as much more excellent than the old, as the covenant he mediates is better. What do you mean his covenant is better? Since it is enacted on better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no occasion to look for a second. But he finds fault with him when he says, behold, the days are coming, and then quotes our passage. And he quotes the whole thing. It's the longest citation of an Old Testament passage anywhere in the New Testament. He quotes the whole thing. They will all know me. And I'll remember their sins some more. That's our new covenant. And it's very different than the Mosaic covenant. It's written on our law. The law is written on our hearts. This is what Jeremiah gets. He gets that. He gets to share that. Not bad. Of course, they had to talk about the destruction of everything. That was not fun. So what do we do with Jeremiah's prophecy and the 500-year gap. That's a long time. Days are coming, we're gonna make a new covenant. 500 years. A lot happens. The whole world changes. Judaism comes into existence. Why does that matter? Because Jesus is a Jew. He comes out of Judaism, not out of Israelite religion per se. I mean, it is Israelite religion, but it's the modified version. And he comes out of that. But Judaism in 500 years develops into several flavors. Okay. Which is why, I mean, there's no Pharisees, there are no Sadducees when Jeremiah's alive. There's none of them when Ezra's alive, 100 years later. They come into existence in this time period, what we call the Second Temple period, because they rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and it's called the Second Temple. And so you have the Sadducees, who are the priestly class by birth. You have to be of the right genealogy. And Sadducee is actually the word Zadokite. That's what it is. Sadok, the guy's name, the high priest, who had promised that the high priesthood would come out of his line as a reward for his good deeds. That's the Sadducees. During this time period, there's a lay movement. Okay. A bunch of Jews are getting together and they said, well, I want to be close to God. I want to know what it is to be close to God. I want to be holy, for lack of a better word. So it's a lay holiness movement. It's not the priests, it's the lay people. Why does that matter? Because they decide to live by the holiness code that applies to the priests. I want to be as holy as the priests, even though I'm not a priest. Those people are the Pharisees. The name comes, we're setting ourselves apart. The verb is to set apart. They desire, they want to know God intimately. That's who the Pharisees are. Does it lead to stuff? Sure. As we saw, Jesus is not a Pharisee. He likes them, but he doesn't. But we tend to look at them as dismissively, and you should look at them positively, but know that they screwed up. Their quest for holiness made them a bit, I don't know what the word is. I'm holier than you. So these weren't the only groups. There was another group who had a leader who was messianic in character, and they went off to Damascus, and their messianic figure got killed. Sadducees went after him. They came back and they made a little settlement out by the Dead Sea, the Qumran settlement. This is the Essenes. As near as we can tell, that's a play on the word chassid, which is similar to the Pharisees in that they're extreme holiness folk. Then there's just the average Jew who just wants to, operate his card shop, pay his bills, and be left alone. So all this is going on. It's a very interesting time that Jesus comes into. Jesus is a carpenter. He's not a Pharisee. He's not Sadducee. Joseph's a carpenter. That's what he learns to do. Up north, nowhere near Jerusalem. Up towards the Sea of Galilee, but not on the Sea of Galilee. And this the movements of Judaism are helping them deal with the macro changes that are going on. So Persia takes over 539, sends the Jews back. Persia gets defeated by the Greeks, 333 BC, Alexander the Great. It was longer than that, but it's an easy date to remember. You've all seen the movies. And Alexander dies, its kingdom gets split up among its generals. And then that stupid city out west decides to make noise, and Rome comes on the scene. And Rome comes through and ends up conquering everything. And the Jews go from, because we now have Jews, from being under the Persians, then under the Greeks, then under the Romans. That is one. This is great. What they are not is an independent power anymore. They get close under Herod. Herod is a king, and he's allowed his rule, but he's a client king to Rome. And so technically, yeah, but he's a Roman province, is what he is. And that's why even when he's king, there are all kinds of Roman presence in Jerusalem. Herod dies, his sons take over, and now you're in the New Testament. And you know this story. So this is what they're going through. It's against that background that Jesus shows up, says, by the way, I'm the Messiah. Are you going to deliver us? Yeah, but not the way you think. I'm not wiping out Rome. We are establishing God's kingdom in a different way and getting people to think differently about all this. It's a big task. And that's what Paul and Peter and all them find themselves enjoying to do. So you got to change people's minds and quit looking for this political deliverance. Because it doesn't happen. Rome's still there. Jesus gets crucified, raised from the dead, but the Jewish state, then the Jews rebel again in 130 AD. And that results in the diaspora again. They get scattered, and it becomes a Roman province, and you know the stuff. Eventually, Islam comes and so forth. Until 1946. And now they're back. And now what's going on? We don't know. I'm not a prophet. But we're watching. All right. So Jeremiah's big concern is he cannot wrap his head around the destruction of Jerusalem and Judea. That's slapping his head back and forth. He gets the new covenant idea, but he still has a hard time with this. And that's what we're left with when you read Jeremiah. Again, I said it's very dark, but they call him the weeping prophet, remember? And that's the reason why. All right, we're going to move on to a different prophet next week. I wanted to finish that up. Any questions? I'm sure there are, but no? Sorry. All right. Jeff, would you close with some prayer, please?
God, we thank you again for running through together this morning. Thank you for Don and all that he's able to teach us each week. God, go down to the service, be with the pastor as he brings the message.
Amen. All right, guys. See you in church.